For many families, a child is a welcome blessing. But for many others, they try to do everything right and a child never comes. Then there's the family in today's story that had child after child in a filthy house where they exposed their children to drugs. There were many adults that knew what was going on that could have come forward and saved these kids, but nobody was willing to speak up. Because of their inaction, it led to an 8-month-old baby girl being stuffed away in a bag and left to rot like a pile of garbage. This is one of the most shocking missing persons cases in Kentucky state history.
Miya Rudd was born in the early morning hours of October 12, 2023 in Owensboro, Kentucky. She was the fourth and youngest child born to Tesla Tucker and Cage Rudd. Her oldest sibling was about 6 years older, but the other two were barely toddlers when Miya was born. Miya's family called her Smiley due to her toothless baby smile, which was a common sight in the Tucker Rudd home. Her siblings were enamored with their new baby sister. Miya was especially close with her brother, who was a little over a year older than she was. He always knew how to make her laugh. By the time she was 8 months old, she was close to crawling and sitting up on her own. She had tufts of brown hair and green eyes. Miya was described as an ambitious and willing mind, tiny toes, and a smile that was contagious, a beacon of hope, a bundle of sunshine from the very start. But while all seemed perfect from the outside, there were plenty of signs from the very start that Miya was in immediate danger.
Tesla Tucker and Cage Rudd were married in January of 2015. Their first child, a girl, was born in the summer of 2017. They had a boy in 2021 and a girl in 2022, and finally Miya in 2023. Now, the couple were not well liked in their community. They lived in Reynolds Station, an unincorporated area in Kentucky about 25 miles from Owensboro. Along with their general bad attitudes, it's said that Tesla and Cage were known for their reckless driving around the community. One resident claims they stole parts from his friend's car. The extended Tucker Rudd family were all known to the justice system. Miya's father, Cage, and grandfather, Ricky Smith, were both felons. Cage was previously charged for possessing and promoting illegal substances, and he pled guilty in March of 2024. Instead of serving time in custody, he was under supervised diversion for 1 year. Ricky also had previous drug offenses and was charged for violating his parole conditions. Her other grandfather, David Tucker, had court fines that went unpaid. Miya's maternal grandmother, Talitha Tucker, had theft and check fraud charges filed against her in Indiana. She evaded these charges by not showing up to her court dates. She was also charged for failure to maintain liability insurance in 2003, which she only served 5 days of a 180-day sentence.
In October of 2023, Miya's paternal grandmother, Billy Smith, was involved in a DV incident with another man, notably not her husband, Ricky Smith. This man claimed to be her intimate partner for about 8 months. They were outside his home when he claims Billy wanted money and the keys to his truck, which he refused to give her. He claims Billy hit and kicked his head and body and eventually knocked him unconscious. He was hospitalized for his wounds, and the next day, someone reported a woman asleep in a car to the police. When they arrived to check on her, they realized it was Billy. She admitted to getting into the altercation, but claimed it was self-defense on her part. She said the man had attempted to beat her with a wooden baseball bat. Billy wasn't detained on the spot, but she would eventually have an arrest warrant for second-degree assault filed against her. Neither parent nor any of her grandparents made any progress towards a better path. They evaded consequences instead of facing them. At any point, these people could have been taken into custody, leaving the young children in the hands of more dangerous family members or even the foster care system. Not everyone in the Tucker Rudd Smith extended family was involved in illegal activities, but it seemed Tesla and Cage didn't see their clean record relatives as proper caretakers.
Miya's 3 siblings were each taken from their parents' home at separate times due to their living conditions. They were placed in their maternal grandparents' custody, but Miya remained with Tesla and Cage. The process to remove her began soon after she was born, but it wasn't swift enough. Social services had Miya on their radar early on when her umbilical cord tested positive for crystal. It was then that they began the process of removing her from her parents' custody. They tried the traditional ways, but they were ignored. Every time social services tried to contact Tesla and Cage, their calls were unanswered. Visiting their Reynolds Station home was just as unuseful. They tried reaching out to the extended family, but they either could not or would not help them. The Cabinet of Health and Family Services, or CHFS, had the power to reach out to the Kentucky State Police. There was enough reason to believe Miya was in immediate danger, and having police resources on their side could have definitely helped sped up the process. The police would later say that the CHFS never asked for their aid in finding Miya. When asked directly what their search efforts looked like, they said they could not answer because of the ongoing investigation.
A friend of Tesla and Cage, Brody Payne, moved onto the property around December of 2023. He lived in a trailer with the VIN number removed. Ricky Smith was also living with them. But this wasn't your normal couch surfing situation. For months, Tesla and Cage were dealing illegal drugs from their home in Reynolds Station with Ricky and Brody's help. They did this with Miya in plain view. Brody had some criminal charges in Indiana, most notably for possession of 28 or more grams of crystal in December of 2016. A court order stated that under no circumstances could the Tucker Rudd children visit their parents' house. However, the court order was violated enough times for illegal substances to eventually show up in the older children's hair.
In the late spring and midsummer of 2024, the Kentucky State Police were investigating drug traffickers in every county of the state. They called this Operation Summer Heat, which received wide press coverage by Kentucky-based news. Louisiana and Alaska, inspired by Kentucky, had their own Operation Summer Heats in the following months. By July, they made over 200 arrests and just under 500 criminal charges. The monetary value of the seized contraband totaled to $684,953.50, along with additional cash, weapons, and other contraband also taken into evidence. The operation was partially credited to the decrease in violent crimes and fatal ODs in the state of Kentucky by the end of 2024. Tesla, Cage, Ricky, and Brody were not as slick as they thought they were. They handled their operation recklessly, having their goods mailed to them through the United States Postal Service. It was only a matter of time before they would be caught, but unfortunately, as you soon will see, it was not the drug trafficking that made them infamous in the state of Kentucky.
Fairly early into their operation, a detection dog with the Davis County Sheriff's Office took interest in a package that was set for delivery. Officers noted the recipient, Brody Payne, and tested the package for illegal substances. Inside was a half-pound of crystal. Someone was mailing illegal drugs through the Postal Service straight into Brody's lap, and law enforcement were going to find out why. Their investigation into him lasted for months and eventually led them straight to his residence and his accomplices. Officers pulled into the Reynolds Station home driveway and delivered the package. When Brody came outside to pick it up, he was arrested on the spot. He already had a warrant out for his arrest for failing to make child support payments, but that was nothing compared to the drug charges. Brody could not play dumb because there was a second package meant for him that the police seized. It had counterfeit drugs containing fentanyl and a powder cutting agent. One package looks bad, but two looks worse. He was booked into the Davis County Detention Center on May 20th and charged with first-degree crystal trafficking, aggravated fentanyl trafficking, and purchase and possession of drug paraphernalia. His cash bond was set at $35,000.
Miya was last seen by her extended family in April of 2024. In early June, Tesla's sister Alexis heard from grandmother Talitha that CPS had taken Miya away. Talitha believed this, or at least she pretended to. Alexis, however, was not convinced and contacted law enforcement for a wellness check for her 8-month-old niece. But per usual, the parents weren't home and nobody could get in contact with them. When investigators spoke to Talitha, she told them her daughter said that Miya was taken away by CPS on May 1st. Detectives followed this lead, but there were no records from CPS backing up the story. Brody was arrested in connection to a drug operation in the Reynolds Station home and for nothing involving Miya's disappearance. But it didn't take long for police to put together that Brody was maintaining his illegal drug operation in the home of a missing infant. They thought that maybe there was a connection, and they were right.
On June 6, Tesla, Cage, and Ricky were found in a Super 8 motel with what law enforcement described as a multitude of really heavy street drugs. The room was in Cage's name. When investigators opened the door, Tesla was sitting on the bed with suspected fentanyl-laced pills within reach and in plain view. She also had crystals stowed away in her purse. Ricky was on the couch next to a glass pipe and had crystal in his pockets. All three of them were arrested, and upon being questioned, they said they didn't know where Miya was. The trio were charged with child abandonment along with drug possession. They were taken into custody at the Davis County Detention Center and held on $20,000 cash bonds. This is the same jail that Brody was in. During the booking process, Cage had weed confiscated from him. He claimed he had forgotten that he had it on him. The next day, the three had additional charges filed against them involving organized crime, CA, and drug trafficking. Ricky was also charged with owning firearms as a felon and named as a persistent felony offender. On June 9th, detectives visited Billy Smith in search of Miya. The baby wasn't with her grandmother, but Billy was brought into custody anyway due to the outstanding arrest warrants against her from October of 2023. If that wasn't bad enough, another man was arrested the moment officers pulled onto the property. This man, Timothy Roach, was arrested for trying to hide a prescription-only substance under a car. He had a long history of drug offenses prior to this arrest on the 9th. Both he and Billy were booked into the Ohio County Detention Center. The next day, Tesla, Cage, and Ricky had their arraignment hearing for the drug charges against them, overseen by Judge Misty Miller of the 6th Judicial District. Later, Tesla and Cage were arraigned for Miya's abandonment and other drug charges by Judge Gregory Vincent of the 38th Judicial District. Ricky and Timothy were also arraigned before Judge Vincent the very same day.
Since Miya was a vulnerable, helpless baby less than 1 year old, locating her was obviously top priority. They scoured the wooded area surrounding her parents' house and the nearby cemetery. They pulled out all the stops, even bringing out cadaver dogs and publishing a tip line. Neighbors and members of the community joined the search efforts. They didn't care much for Tesla and Cage, and most people didn't even know they had a fourth infant child, but they were willing to put their dislike on hold while the baby girl was missing. On June 12th, law enforcement returned to the home of Miya's maternal grandparents, David and Talitha Tucker, with a search warrant. Once again, Miya was not there, but the couple was arrested for their unrelated outstanding warrants. As we mentioned earlier, Talitha had theft and fraud charges against her in the state of Indiana, and David had unpaid court fines. They were held in the Davis County Detention Center. Police also took their electronics into evidence. Miya's sisters and brother were promptly whisked away to safety. The following day, Brody Payne had more charges filed against him. In addition to the possession of illegal substances, he was charged with trafficking them, participating in organized crime, and wanton endangerment.
Neither Tesla nor Cage cooperated with detectives. They insisted Miya was taken away by Child Services. They sent officers on a fool's errand despite knowing exactly what happened to their baby. The grandparents didn't help either, and the extended family were completely in the dark. This period of uncertainty frightened the community. They thought they lived in a safe place with kind neighbors, so Miya's disappearance shook them to their core. There was no evidence of Miya being alive or dead. If it was the latter, law enforcement suspected she would be in the wooded area behind her parents' home or in a nearby cemetery on a hill. They failed to find anything with the cadaver dogs alone, so they made plans to return with more specialized equipment.
The Ohio County Coroner's Office also joined in the efforts. Corey King, the public affairs officer for the Kentucky State Police, made it clear that the coroner's office's involvement didn't necessarily mean that Miya was dead. However, he didn't mince words with the press. He said, "We're very hopeful and optimistic that we would find her alive. Maybe perhaps a family member has her, but the longer this goes on, the more grim it seems." He also said this case was an example of how illicit street drugs can destroy lives and cause the erosion of our community. Officer King also criticized the family for their uncooperative behavior throughout the investigation, saying, "It's completely sad that you have a family that goes this deep in the family tree that's not willing to cooperate with the baby's investigation. It's saddening. and I can't say that I've quite seen it like this before.
At 1:15 p.m. on June 14th, 1 week after she went missing, Miya was found. She hadn't gone far. In fact, she was still in her home. Law enforcement found a black Adidas duffel bag in the entry room of the house. There was some debris over the bag, indicating an attempt to hide it. Officers opened the bag, and everyone's worst fears came true. Miya was already decomposing. She was so unrecognizable that no one could even tell if it was her. A transport vehicle brought her to the Louisville Regional Office of the Medical Examiner for further investigation.
You didn't need to be an expert detective to see that the Reynolds Station house was not suitable for a child, much less an infant. The residence was filthy and dangerous, with illegal substances, paraphernalia, and weapons found by investigators. One officer found a bag tainted with crystal only inches away from Miya's crib. Initial searches left the property largely undisturbed, but there were so many illegal drugs and residue inside the house that the police were worried their officers would OD just from staying inside the house for too long. Investigators had to take several precautions before searching the interior. This included sterilizing the house before performing the search. It took multiple search warrants and visits from the police to get the house safe enough for a thorough investigation. It's not reported how or if this affected the crime scene, but it demonstrates how bad the environment was. If the police were worried for the health and safety of their trained officers, imagine what that house could do to an 8-month-old infant girl. In total, 8 people were arrested during the search for Miya. Her parents, Tesla and Cage, maternal grandparents Talitha and David, paternal grandparents Ricky and Billy, along with Brody Payne and Timothy Roach. After the remains were confirmed to belong to Miya, 4 of those 8 arrested were charged for her mistreatment and abandonment: Tesla Tucker, Cage Rudd, Ricky Smith, and Brody Payne.
Miya's cause of death is still undetermined even after all the time that has passed. Her body was too decomposed for medical professionals to come to an accurate conclusion. Despite this, the coroner's office labeled her death a homicide. The state coroner's office said in their report, "Based on information provided to me and post-mortem examination findings, the cause of death in this 8-month-old female, Miya Rudd, is undetermined. The advanced state of decomposition precluded an optimum examination. Given the scene, circumstances, and autopsy findings, the manner of death is best classified as homicide." More detailed results wouldn't come until months later. It would eventually be made public that Miya had crystal in her system even after her death. To be precise, 23.3 nanograms per milliliter. Miya's aunt Alexis organized a GoFundMe to help pay for Miya's funeral, which was held on July 25th. There were speeches, live music, prayers, and a sermon. The service is archived on the Glen Funeral Home's website.
Tesla, Cage, Ricky, and Brody were all initially charged for drug possession, drug trafficking, and firearm possession. After Miya was found on June 14th, the 4 were also charged for her death. These were not murder charges, at least not yet. The charges ranged from failure to report a child's death, mishandling her corpse, endangerment, and criminal CA. During the June 17th preliminary hearing, Tesla cried in the courtroom as the charges were read, and cried even more as the hearing went on. In total, Tesla was found guilty for 10 charges, while the 3 men were found guilty of 13 charges each. Their 3 extra charges were for firearm possession, despite being convicted felons. In November, the state of Kentucky filed more charges against Talitha: controlled substance endangerment to a child, criminal abuse, and hindering prosecution. Talitha allowed the children to stay with their dangerous parents in an unsafe environment, as noted earlier. She also gave Tesla and Cage money she had previously stolen for safekeeping to limit her chances of being arrested for theft. This possibly circles back to the theft and fraud she committed in Indiana.
While the coroner's office labeled Miya's case a homicide, the trial was not a homicide case. It took some time, roughly 6 months, for the DNA evidence collected at the scene to be thoroughly tested. Finally, in January of 2025, investigators were confident enough in their findings to increase the charges against the 4 convicted adults. The Kentucky State Police presented a new case in an Ohio County courtroom. The result was the addition of murder charges to the 4 convicted parties, in addition to charges they already were found guilty for. The police successfully argued the 4 adults knowingly put Miya in a dangerous situation, if not directly harming her. In addition, the 4 were accused of criminal mistreatment of Miya's 3 older siblings. Following the presentation, a superseding indictment was filed against the 4 adults. This means that the charges against them were amended based on the new evidence presented in court. The superseding indictment listed extra charges for each of the 4 convicted adults: 1 count of murder for Miya, and 1 count of criminal abuse of a child 12 and under for Miya and each of her 3 siblings. In addition, Ricky was charged with persistent felony offender. Tesla, Ricky, and Brody pled not guilty to the new charges of murder and endangerment on February 4, 2025. Tesla's attorney filed a motion to examine and test any evidence seized by law enforcement. Cage was meant to appear alongside them, but his arraignment was pushed to March 4th. He, Tesla, and Ricky will appear again in court in April, and Brody Payne in May. They are each held on separate $250,000 cash bonds. Now, we should also note here, since they haven't fully gone to trial, all parties are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
During and after Miya's case, some alarming actions were taken in Kentucky's Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Today, the Kentucky Auditor's Office houses the Kentucky Commonwealth Office of Ombudsman. Before this, it was under CHFS control. In cases where child protection investigation proves inadequate, it's the Ombudsman's job to investigate the how and the why. According to Allison Ball, the public auditor, the Ombudsman relies heavily on a database called iTwist to perform these investigations. The Ombudsman had full access to iTwist previously while it was under CHFS authority, but when it transitioned to the public auditor's office, the cabinet refused to give them this access. This was in July of 2024. A month after Miya's name was published on every major news outlet in the state. The auditor's office and the office of the ombudsman filed a lawsuit against the cabinet for this. It was worth the effort in the end. In September 2024, the ombudsman regained access to the iTwist database and could resume their usual duties. More recently, a bill advanced that would protect the ombudsman's access to iTwist.
During this dispute between CHFS and the auditor's office, a more helpful and hopeful piece of legislation was in the works. The same day Miya was found, a Kentucky man named Eric Williams created a petition on change.org. Eric Williams has no relation to Miya, but he was so upset, frustrated, and heartbroken by her story that he wanted to see some changes come from it. Eric proposed the creation of a new law called Miya's Law. If a parent or parents lose custody of children and haven't regained that custody, they would not be allowed to keep a newborn in their care. The petition received over 2,000 signatures within the first 5 days alone and is currently at just under 8,600. Eric told news station WPSD Local 6 News,
I can't go buy a car if I didn't pay for my last car, can I? Right? I can't go adopt a dog if I was found of animal abuse. But how come I can leave with a brand new baby when I lost my previous ones?
Eric made it clear he didn't want to separate families, but to protect vulnerable children like Miya and her siblings.
The people's call for action did not go unheard. Kentucky State Representative Myron Dossett sponsored Baby Miya's Law, officially called House Bill 574. It was approved by the House Standing Committee on February 20th, 2025, and will be brought before the main floor for further approval. Currently, the wording of the bill states, if anyone knows of a child born to a parent or parents who have A, lost custody of other children and haven't regained that custody, or B, have ongoing cases of mistreatment of children against them, they must report those parents to the authorities. In 2023, before Miya's passing, discussions for a similar bill began, but ultimately never came to fruition. One of the parties involved was Heather Gray, executive director of the Joy Closet, a nonprofit organization that aids Kentucky's foster children. Representative Dossett was also part of the discussions for this earlier bill, so Heather was easily able to reach out to him about Baby Miya's Law. While it is sad it took the death of an 8-month-old little girl for such measures to be taken at all, Heather and the others at the Joy Closet are grateful to see change being made. Representative Dossett said about the bill, "When a child is born to parents who already have their children in someone else's custody due to neglect or abuse, the state should intervene and ensure that the child is safe and cared for. I believe in second chances, but there is no second chance for a child who passes away due to abuse or neglect. We have to put children's safety first and ensure that the parents are proactively changing their lives for the better before any child, especially a newborn, is returned to their custody."
The 3 older children are now in the care of their Aunt Alexis and her boyfriend, John. In an interview with WPSD Local 6 News, Alexis recalled the day she learned that Miya was found.
And they told me they found her. I was like, okay, is she okay? And it was not okay. She wasn't okay. And I lost a little piece of me that day. It was hard.
They intend to raise Miya's siblings in their home with their own children. Alexis and John shared the following with reporters.
They deserve way better than they have been given. And I want to give them the best life that they deserve.
Alexis and John elected to take on her sister's 3 kids, Miya's siblings, to raise along with their own. The goal, to hopefully make them a permanent fixture.
We may not be their actual parents, but we will fill that void. We're going to love them like we're their actual parents. We're going to make sure that, they are taken care of, they get the best education possible, they get to do whatever they want to do, and they can just enjoy their life as kids. And
they don't deserve this. Nobody does. My family don't. They don't. It's hard. But I'm going to make sure that they have the best life possible.